Well, hello there and welcome back to my channel. Now today we're looking at this build. This is the second video in a two-part series. The first video will be appearing now, and we're looking at whether or not this little guy here, the Gemku all-in-one board, it's got a flight controller and ESC, which is 35 amp, all built into one Whoop style board, if that can power to our satisfaction a proper 5-inch quad. So this is the completed build. After we've had a brief overview of what we've done with the build, some changes from the original video, or astute of you would have noticed that already, and then we're going to do some flight footage, and then we're going to come back with some conclusions. Firstly, we're just going to have a look at the completed build while it's looking nice and pristine before we take it out to the cold, wet English weather of an English winter, and maybe get it caked in mud or who knows what. So we'll get to that obviously in a bit. So let's have a look at the build then. Well, as we said, there's been some changes. The first one we're already looking at here, and instead of having a GoPro mount on there, we've got this mount here, this GEP RC mount, which I might do a video in the future. It's a really good mount for the Insta360 Go. I really recommend this mount. So we put that on instead, mostly because the body of this frame is quite short. So one time we put the LiPo on, there wasn't any room really to put a GoPro on the front, so I used a smaller camera so we can get some nice HD footage, but obviously that's the limitation of this this frame. Bigger frame, obviously you can put a proper GoPro on there and you're away, but we'll get some good footage with the Insta360 Go. Certainly good enough for our purposes here. So that's our first change. Our second change comes in more inside the quad itself on the actual technical side of things, electronics. So I didn't put in the capacitor that came with it. This is a Panasonic capacitor that I've got. Always good to have a good selection of capacitors when you're doing builds. Never know what size, you might need to shrink them down to fit them in. And the other one was just huge, just a little one just to stick in there. More than satisfactory for what we need it for. So we've got that sitting in there, which is a change. The VTX is the other major change. I wanted to use, I think it's called like the Triangle D for machine. It's a Whoop style sort of, it's a triangular VTX that will fit quite nicely on top of the Whoop board on the same mounting holes. But unfortunately it uses a UFL connector, and I didn't have a UFL to SMA. I only had these MMCX to SMA, so I couldn't fit that on, couldn't connect it up. I didn't want to just run a small antenna that was sort of stubby and stick around here. I wanted to run a proper full-size antenna, which is what I've got here, just a Menace antenna from the company. Mostly use Menace, certainly on my goggles. Menace antennas are brilliant, but I had a spare one here just to go on this build, and I thought quite nice, suits the build. So to use that I needed to use this connector here, which obviously only connects up to this Eachine VTX here, quite a nice VTX from them, very robust, sturdy, takes 7 to I think it's 36 volts, could be wrong about that, but anyway certainly 2S and up. So I've connected it not directly to the LiPo there, but I'll try and give it a bit of a cleaner picture. So I've connected it to the little 9-volt output that we have on this board, which I believe is designed for the DJI system, but quite happily suits connecting up a VTX2 as well when we're using analog. But we are using the same little 5-volt 14mm camera, which we've got the little, so we can see the little 14mm to 19mm adjustment, because this is designed, this 3D printed part is designed for a 19mm camera. So we've just used that as well, and because this doesn't have a DVR on it, we wanted to put a DVR on it, get some like footage from the camera, just so we can show that as well as our Insta360 footage. So we've got a little DVR on the back here, connected, sitting on this sort of 3D printed shelf that came with the frame, and underneath that is sitting the receiver. We've got our antenna tubes here at the back, just to keep the antennas out of the way, but nicely so they don't get affected. So you can see they should be nicely clear, so we shouldn't get any range issues from having the antennas out the back like that, and they should be protected any sort of frontal crash or anything, because this is designed to be quite a tough frame, and designed by Doomed FPV to be quite a solid, sturdy frame that you can sort of bash about with. That's his flying style, which is fair enough. You're going to fly quads, you're going to hit stuff, you might as well get a frame that's going to deal with those impacts in a better way. So that's our build. So now think that's pretty much everything. Can't think of anything else. I think it looks very nice. I do like the sort of the purple jello or jelly props, whatever they're called, peanut butter and jelly props, with the purple on the motors. I think that looks quite nice. Goes together quite nicely. So very satisfied with this build. I think it looks good. So now we're going to take it out and do some flying, and then we'll come back with our thoughts at the end. So let's go out to the field and let's have a look at some flight from the 360 Go and from the DVR as well. So that was probably about the dullest bit of acro flying you've seen all day, but it shows that this quad can fly and fly well. Do some light acro manoeuvres without any major issue that I could certainly feel, and handle them no problem. I was flying a bit conservatively because of the conditions. The ground was really wet. I didn't really want to land in some wet grass and have it cause shorts, all sorts of problems. So, but apart from that, yeah, it was fine. I'm still not the greatest pilot in the universe, but you could see from the footage that it does handle those manoeuvres okay, especially when you give it full throttle. So it didn't burn out, it didn't pop. So the experiment from that point of view was a success. We know that yes, these are perhaps lighter pitch props and maybe many people like to fly with. I thought they were handled really well, nice props. And the motors are a low amp draw motor for this sort of size, very efficient, very nice motors, very smooth. Really like them, they impressed me a lot. So not putting too much pressure on the board that perhaps another setup could, but certainly it flew. So the question now comes down to, well, it can fly, but will I be keeping this quad in the same setup that it has now, or will I be changing out the all-in-one flight control ESC for something perhaps a bit more designed for a quad this size? Well, yes, I will be changing that out, and I've got a few reasons as to why I'm going to be doing that. So my first reason really is the fact that when you're flying this, you don't have much faith and trust in the board itself. And that's to say that I doubt the reliability. I'm sure GEMQ boards are just as reliable as anybody else's. But there's always that little doubt, that niggle in your mind, that if you just give it too much throttle, then it's going to burn out and your quad's going to fall out of the sky. You know, so even with this rig, which is quite a low amp draw setup with the low pitch props and the efficient motors, it's still that niggle in your mind, and that makes you fly differently, more conservatively. You're not pushing it because you think, well, if I push it too much, will it burn out? Obviously it flew well for that first pack there, but what about the 5th pack? What about the 10th pack? It's a hot day, you run 4 packs through it already, so the ball's running a bit warm, and then suddenly you just give it that extra bit of throttle on a fresh pack and it burns out. There's always that doubt in your mind because you feel that you're pushing the ball to its limit, and you are pushing the ball to its limit, there's no doubt about it. This ball is not designed to go in a quad this size with this setup. So there's always that niggle in your mind, and it can affect your flying style. So that's one main reason why I want to change this out. Second reason is, well, to be honest, a little bit awkward to use these little boards in a build this size. With the gauge of wire that you use on a rig that's 5-inch, it's a lot bigger than something with a 3-inch or even a 4-inch size. So with the small pads that you find on this board, it's difficult to get the cables in there and get them soldered up on this particular board. So there's that to consider. Obviously it's a smaller board, so it's lighter, but is weight really a consideration for a freestyle rig? A few grams less, is it worth it? I don't know. That's up to you. Obviously if you're racing, you'd want to save as much weight, but would you want to put this board on a racing rig with powerful motors running a much steeper pitch and really pushing it at the top end of the throttle all the time. Could it be reliable enough to keep going with that punishment? Possibly not, no. So there's that to consider. So the weight issue, really not much of an issue. There's not really an option saying, oh, I'm going to save some weight by using it instead. Not really worth it in my opinion. Maybe it's worth it in yours, but in my opinion probably not. Also, there's the price when it comes to how much this costs and what else is available for a similar value. So this guy came in around about £30, something like that. Obviously, if you get an offer, or it's a sale day, or you've got a voucher or something, then you can get it slightly cheaper. But for around about that price, you can get one of these guys here, which is the Mamba board. Very, very well known, these boards. 30 by 30 stack, designed specifically for this size build. You get all the parts in a nice package. It's Mamba, so it's from Diatone, so there's some pedigree there. A lot of people have fly these boards. I've got one of these on my other 5-inch quads, and it flies really well. Not had any issues over the year or so I've been flying with it. No problem at all. And it's about the same price, so it's kind of, yeah. And this is a 40 amp ESC. It's a an F405, not an F411, which is on this board. So it's got more UARTs. Everything's laid out a bit better. Nice big pads, nice space for things like filtration and everything else. So this is designed for this size quads, and you feel that it is, and that doubt, as we mentioned earlier, is out of your mind when you're flying like this. Yeah, it can fall out of the sky. I mean, these boards aren't perfect. I'm sure that many people have had issues with these guys, but for the most part, because you're not pushing it to the extreme limit, which you are with this, you're more likely to have a more satisfying experience with this board. And also, don't forget, you've got two separate boards, an ESC and a flight controller. So if one is damaged, or if one has an issue, well, you can change it out, and that individual board is going to be cheaper than buying both these boards together. Whereas with the one board that we have in here, well, if something goes on that, even if it's just perhaps we pull a pad on our RX-TX, one of those pads, and so we have to try and find somewhere else that we can use. Well, that's going to be really, really awkward, because they've only got two, and one of them will be for smart audio, and so then you've got issues and problems. So there's that to consider as well. In comparison to that, in my mind, it's not really worth not buying this instead of buying this, even if this is maybe a couple of pound more expensive, depending on obviously sales and deals and vouchers, etc, etc. So there you go. We have a successful experiment. It flies, it works, it can handle the weight and the pressure that we're putting it under, and it flies fine, but the experiment wasn't just whether it would work, it was whether, should we do this, is this something we want to do? And to be honest, it's not really worth it in my opinion. Now, it's a good board, and I'm probably going to put this board in something else. I might do a mini long range 4-inch build, crossfire, etc, etc. So I want to take it out of this anyway, and I'm sure it'll be fine in a build like that. That won't be pushing it too far, whereas in this, well, I think I'll be happier with having that board in, and it'll fit in nicely and be nice and easy to solder up, and we don't have any issues there. So there we go, an interesting experiment. Hopefully, perhaps as we've gone through this together, you've seen some things, you've learned some things. If you've got any comments, suggestions or thoughts, put them down below in the comment section. I really appreciate you spending your time thinking about things, thinking about my videos, and putting those comments down below. That really helps me out and helps the channel as well. If you want to hit that thumbs up, I'd appreciate that as well, but only if you feel you want to. Likewise with the subscribe button. I don't put out too much content, but I do semi-regularly, so there'll be videos, a couple a month perhaps, nothing too major. So if you want to hit that subscribe button for more content like this, looking at products, doing some experiments, ideas, and just some general acro and flying videos. I'm doing some planes at the moment, which has been really interesting, which is something I've not done before, so getting into new things as well during the winter months. I've got an RC car that I'm going to be building soon as well. I'm really looking forward to that. So thanks so much for watching. Appreciate you spending your time looking at my content. Thanks for all the support you're giving to the channel, and perhaps I'll catch you in a video in the future. Take care then. Bye bye.